Let's continue with pain in childbirth, the seed of the woman. So this is Genesis 3:16. So you remember in Genesis 3:16, as a result of Adam and Eve's sin, the Lord said that she would bring forth children in pain and that she would have sorrows in bringing forth children. I want to look at, it says, I will greatly multiply your sorrow in your conception. In pain you shall bring forth children. And what I want to do is I want to connect that to Genesis 35:16 through 18. So let me read that. Then they journeyed from Bethel, and when there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath, Rachel labored in childbirth, and she had hard labor. Now it came to pass, when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said to her, do not fear, you will have this son also. And so it was, as her soul was departing, for she died, that she called his name Ben-Oni, son of my sorrow, but his father called him Benjamin. Okay? Now, I don't know if any of you have ever connected this to Genesis 3:16, but what Adonai pronounced in Genesis 3:16, typically we think of just the pain in childbirth part, okay? But actually, there's more because, as a matter of fact, let me read exactly. Let's see, is this one I agree with? Right. I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. You see, so it's not just, so we tend to focus on in pain you shall bring forth children, but what about this part here, I will multiply your sorrow and your conception? And I think what he's saying there is that there's going to be sorrow and sometimes in bringing forth children. And this can really be seen in the in the matriarchs. And in anyone who's going to bring forth someone who is a messianic figure or someone of prominence, you see this idea that there's sorrow in conception. And so when you think about it, as I said, the matriarchs, they pretty much all had this sorrow in conception. So you will remember that Sarah was barren, okay? So she suffered the stigma of that barrenness for her, most of her life. She didn't have a child until she was 75. Is that correct? 75, I think. I was looking at my wife and she was like, I think it was 75. 90. You are absolutely correct. Right. Abraham was 75 when they got right. She was 90 years old, and how could I forget that? Because there's all sorts of messianic significance with 3 times 30, because Abram was 90. Okay, all right. So she was 90 years old, and then remember Rebecca, right? How many of you know that Rebecca, she had trouble conceiving? It was a number of years. I think her and Isaac were married about 20 years before she could conceive. And as a matter of fact, it says that Isaac prayed for her that she could conceive, right? And then think about Rachel, right? You remember Rachel, there was all sorts of sorrow in her conception. As a matter of fact, because of Rachel's sorrow in her conception, that brought all sorts of dysfunction to that family. Most of the dysfunction in Jacob's family, well, besides the fact they had 2 wives. All right, that was problem number 1, right? 2 wives, right? But most of the sorrow was due to the competition between Rachel and Leah because Rachel could not conceive. And so she suffered greatly in that conception. And then you think of those matriarchs, the mothers of the faith that gave birth to prominent messianic figures. John the Baptist, okay? Elizabeth, she was barren. You think of Hannah, who brought forth Samuel, who was he was a prophetic picture of John the Baptist. And so again, these matriarchs, they had sorrows in their conception, and this all goes back to Genesis 3:16, where not only does it say that they will have pain, in pain you shall bring forth children, the actual physical pain, but that first part right there, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. And I believe the matriarchs, we see that. Okay? Here's another theme. We're just looking at a few themes that, as I said, that as you read other narratives later on in the Torah, you can relate all of these back to Genesis 1 through 3. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return. So what we want to do here is we want to think about Noah. In Genesis 5:29, it says that Lamech, Noah's father, called his name Noah, saying, he will comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord has cursed. Okay? And so again, right there, that is another thematic connection, and that one was more obvious. So some of these connections, they're very obvious, and some of them are not so obvious until we start trying to connect the theme. But right there, you can see that theme there. And then, as I said, there are going to be certain acts of redemption. And when I say acts of redemption, what I mean by that is an act either by Adonai or by a person that is intended to help bridge the relationship between Adonai and man, something that's going to happen in order to heal that relationship or bring us closer to Adonai. So with Adam and Eve, it was that he made tunics of skins and that he clothed them. We see these acts of redemption from some of the others. In this case, with Noah, his act of redemption was building the ark. Okay, his act of redemption was building the ark. And with the patriarchs, we see that they built altars. Okay, as a matter of fact, in one of our teachings, later this afternoon, what we're going to do is we're going to look at those who are the seed of the serpent as they're developed in the first 11 chapters. We're going to see what they built, right? We're going to look at the word built, and we're going to look at the seed of the woman, those who obeyed Adonai, and we're going to see what they built. And all you have to do is compare those two, and you can see the difference. You can see the difference. And then our final theme is judgment. It says, so he drove out the man. Okay, this is Adam and Eve. Remember, he drove them out. In other words, their judgment was an exile. And that's why at the top there on the slides, for those you here who can see that, it says judgment, death, exile, scattering, chaos, devastation. Those are the different forms that judgment will take, okay? So judgment is different in different instances, okay? So for Adam and Eve, it was that they were exiled from their land of promise, and the same thing happened for for the nation of Israel. Remember, their ultimate punishment was that they were scattered from the land. They were driven out from the special land. And again, we can easily see Adam and Eve as prophetic pictures of the nation of Israel. They were a special people given a special land. They were given the choice between life and death. Okay, they chose death, and then they were banished. That's exactly the story of the nation of Israel. Special people, special land, given the choice between life and death, Deuteronomy 30, and they chose death, and they were exiled from the land. But that's thematically connected to Cain. Now, so when Adonai, it says that he banished. The Hebrew word is garash, that he forcefully expelled them from the garden. That same word, garash, is used right here. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have garash, you have driven me, you have forcefully expelled me out this day from the face of the ground. Well, in what way did he expel him from the face of the ground? Well, it was his punishment. His punishment was that he could plant seed, he could till the ground, he could plant all sorts of crops, and the earth would never yield a harvest for him. Think about that. That was his punishment. The earth will no longer yield its strength to you. And so, in that sense, he says, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. In other words, just as Adonai had driven Adam and Eve away from the Garden of Eden, how he had exiled them from that land, so likewise he has exiled Cain from the land, in the sense that the earth will no longer bear its fruit. That's why he was a wanderer, you see. That's why Cain wandered. It says that he was a wanderer. That's why Cain is the one who came up with the idea. He was the first person to come up with the idea to build a city, you see. Right? Does that make sense? It makes sense that he would be the first person to come up with the idea, I'm going to build a city. I'm going to build a place. It's not based on the agrarian lifestyle, of the rest of everyone on earth, because why waste his time planting seed, right? So he's the one that came up with the idea of a city where, we'll have a lot of people, and we'll just kind of put them all together. Right? We'll have them, just kind of all bunched together, and we'll put all these houses up together, and we'll go and we'll pay the farmers, we'll get food and we'll ship it in here some kind of way or whatever, right? We'll go trade or barter or whatever. But see, that's the reason why Cain came up with the idea of a city, and so we can see that the reason why was because he was exiled, as it were, as this verse says here, from the land. Okay, all right. So if you guys could throw in the second, well, hold on, let me see. No, I got one more. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So let's look at our initial conclusions. So we've seen different instances of these 16 themes, how they repeat themselves in other stories, in other narratives in the Bible. We've gone from new creation to judgment. We've seen different examples of it. And here's where this will eventually lead to, it will culminate in the greatest judgment, okay? This is where this is all going, okay? So this is going to help us to kind of put together Revelation and what it's all about, right? Because see, what we're saying here is that Adonai, he always starts off with a new creation. It's all about him bestowing authority and power on his man or his people, and then them failing, and then judgment coming. Okay, and so at some point this cycle needs to be broken. Now we know that Yeshua broke it. Okay, but we want to see how this is going to set us up to understand the things in the book of Revelation. So in other words, what I want to suggest to you is that if we understand the book of Genesis, especially those first 3 chapters, it's actually going to help us understand things about the book of Revelation. And if we are that generation, or whoever the last generation is, that's going to see the events in the book of Revelation fulfilled, it's going to help us understand what's happening, why it's happening, and what our part in it is. Okay? It's going to help us understand our part in those events. Because as I've said before, we've talked about this before. I've shared with you that I don't think I do not believe in any way that there's a pre-trib rapture. Okay? And one of the things that, and there are lots of reasons why, but one of the things that we need to do is we need to make sure that our theology is correct. Okay? And part of that correct theology of understanding the book of Revelation and our potential role in it, if it is going to happen in our lifetime, part of that theology is based upon what we learn here. Okay? And so if we understand this right here, then it's going to help us understand the book of Revelation, and then it'll help us understand when we hear certain things like, well, we're going to be raptured out of here and da-da-da-da-da. Well, is that true or not? The way you know whether or not it's true or not is, does it match up with the revelation, okay? So we'll be looking at that. So understanding the foundation of this pattern and its repetitions will help us more fully understand the book of Revelation, which presents us with the culmination of the pattern of judgments. You see? It's the culmination. See, it started in Genesis 1 to 3. We have the first judgment of Adam and Eve. Then we see it goes to the judgment of the Noah and the flood. Then it goes to the judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah, and then other judgments that we're going to see. Okay? All right, so if we can have that second one. Does anyone have a question while he's loading in the next one? Yes.
Thank you. With Cain and his offering, because he offered it from the land that was cursed, is that part of why it wasn't acceptable to the Lord?
So let's read that. We'll answer that while they're putting it in there. I don't think so. I'm going to give you the reason why I think his offering wasn't accepted. Let's look here. Now, notice what it says here in Genesis 4:2, the second half. Now, Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. Verse 3, and it came to pass, and it came, and in the process of time, it came to pass, now I want you to listen to this, that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Now notice how verse 4 starts. Abel also, you see what it's, in other words, it sounds like he's about to say, well, just like Cain brought, Abel also, but notice what it says. It's almost as if you're thinking, and in the process of time, Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord, and it almost sounds like it should say, Abel also brought of the fruit of his flock. You would think that that's all it would say, because it's saying and also. So Cain brought of the fruit of the ground, and then and it says Abel also, and you would think it would just say brought of, but this case, of the animals. But what it says Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock. So in other words, the symmetry that was being established by saying Cain brought of the fruit of the ground, and then you would think it would say Abel brought of the fruit of the flock, maybe. But the symmetry is broken when he says Abel brought of the first fruits. And so I think that's what the scripture is saying, is that Cain did not bring the first fruits. He just kind of brought something from the earth, but it wasn't the first fruits. And so Adonai said, no, that's not acceptable. You have to give me the first fruits. But this is something that the Torah, this is just kind of one of those ways the Torah teaches us indirectly. It sets up something where you expect to hear one thing, and then he throws something else in there. That's what you need to key in on. Okay? So it's kind of what I'm thinking. All right? Yeah, Stevie.
This idea of the okay, thank you. I'm trying to think how to phrase this. There's a messianic theme of all the messianic, the people who are messianic and leading to Yeshua. They were all shepherds, right? That's a theme.
Right.
But Noah says Noah was a farmer, right? And a vineyard in that. And so there's a connection there because we've seen virtually all of Cain's descendants wiped out in the flood. Except there's the tradition that his wife was actually a descendant of Cain, that Noah's wife. That's okay. So
you better get to the question.
Okay, I'm trying to get to the question. What, with the flood being a new beginning and really a cleansing, a complete cleansing, and a kind of like a reboot or a restart, I'm thinking, is there something there about that that somehow the curse was mitigated and the land became more fruitful after the flood and after Cain's curse was basically enacted upon him and his descendants.
I'm going to say I don't know. I have to think about that one. All
All
right?
right, I'll have to think about it.
Yes. All right. Let's go. All right. So what I want to do is, and I'll keep that in my memory bank, Stevie. I'm just not sure. Yeah. So let's look at. So as I said, from Genesis 1 through 7 is what I call a major cycle, because it pretty much repeats most of the 16 themes. But even inside the major cycle, we can see kind of smaller cycles of this pattern of judgment. So let's start off with. Okay, I already talked about this. The key to understanding the pattern, how it repeats itself, is to thematically connect what you're reading to Genesis 1 through 3. And so what I want you to, here's something else we need to think about. And I was talking to Joshua Powers about this. Those primary themes, they're going to take on new kind of manifestations or transformations as you progress through the scriptures. And here's what I mean by that. Is, okay, in the first, you had Adonai literally create the heavens and the earth, right? And then after his man sinned and he brought judgment, he didn't like destroy the whole earth and start over with tohu vabohu again and then do a total new recreation and start off with Noah. You see what I'm saying? When he started off with Noah, it was a recreation of the earth, right? He didn't start over at the beginning exactly the same way. So there was a slight transformation. And so with all of these themes, there's a slight transformation. And even after Noah, after Noah sinned, he didn't send another flood. Yes?
I've got one question from the online audience.
Oh,
Is the firstborn the same as your best?
Is the what?
The firstborn the same as your best?
No, it's the firstborn. Unless it was blind or lame or halt in some kind of way. Okay? All right. Thank you. All right. So, where was I? What was I talking about? Oh, right. So just the same way with Noah, right? So after Noah's flood, and he starts off with Noah, and he gives him authority and power, and he says, hey, you can eat this, you can't eat that, and hey, I'm going to give you a sign. Everything he did with Adam, it was different. The sign was different. Okay, the sign of Sabbath versus the sign of the rainbow. And also after Noah, he didn't destroy the whole earth again, right, with another flood. So we should expect that as we continue to go through Scripture, each one of these themes is going to be transformed slightly. And so our task is to just see as they unfold and be able to make the proper connection, okay? Otherwise Adonai would have to, destroy the earth every time he'd have to destroy the whole earth, and he's not going to do that, right? So our job is to figure out how these themes transform, okay? So for instance, like initially, the initial act of redemption was Adonai covering Adam and Eve with the skins, right? But once we get past the flood, you see that most of the act of redemption are the seed of the woman calling upon the name of the Lord. And eventually, when it gets to Israel, it's going to be them offering the sacrifices in the temple instead of on the altars, okay? So when Abraham and the patriarchs, when they're building all altars and they're making offerings, that altar is like a prototype of what eventually will become the altar in the tabernacle, which then becomes a picture of the altar in the temple, of course, blah, 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 okay? So we have to just watch these, watch these things here. All right, so I'll point those out as we go. All right, so let's look at this theme here of man's ancestral plot of the land. It says, she bore again, and this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep. Cain was a tiller of the ground. And so this is going to be our first instance of what I call the enmity of the seed, and we're going to we'll spend some time here and show how we know that Cain and Abel represent the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. Okay, we're going to show how we know this for a fact. Okay. Now, and Cain talked with his brother, and it says he rose up against Abel, his brother, and killed him. Okay? He rose up and he killed him. Not to mention the fact that when a serpent is about to strike you, what does it do? It rises up, right? You remember that time we were walking down Greystone and we saw that the snake, it was a copperhead right in the middle of the road. So it's about, so we were walking, long story. Anyway, when he was ready, he was just kind of coiled, and then he rose up like that, and he was cocked and ready to go, right? He rose up. Cain, as a serpent, rose up, and that's just hinted at there, okay? But let's see how we know that this is what's going on. How do we know for sure that we're supposed to see Abel and Cain as the two warring seeds? Because as I said, Revelation 12:17 says that the seed of the woman are those who keep God's commandments and have the testimony of Yeshua. And so the seed of the serpent are those who don't obey his commandments. So this is how we can see that. And how do we know for sure that Abel is the seed of the woman? Well, this is how. Right there, Revelation 12:17. So we already talked about that, right? And as a matter of fact, so if you have the New King James Version, it says, and the dragon was enraged with the woman and went to make war with the rest of her offspring. Well, you know what? For this verse, I like good old King Jimmy. Because you can make the connection back to Genesis 3:15 a lot easier with the King James, because right there, the King James, it doesn't say the rest of her offspring, it says the remnant of her seed. Her seed. And who is her? Revelation 12 is about the woman. Remember it says, I saw as a woman, she was clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet. She had a garland of 12 stars. She was, in pain to deliver a child. That is the woman. So when it says the remnant of her seed, it's the remnant of the seed of the woman, just like Genesis 3:15, right? But it says that those who have his commandments. This is how we know that this is the case. In 1 John 3:10 through 12, it says, the children of God, and I'm going to say the seed, right? The children of God, that's God's seed. The children of God, or the seed of God, and the children, or the seed of the devil, are manifest. So right there, John's telling you that there's two seeds in the world, right there. The children of God. Now, he says the children of God. He didn't say the seed of the woman or the children of the woman, okay? But the seed of the woman, they're synonymous, the seed of the woman, the seed of God. And the children, or the seed of the devil, so there's two seeds right there. And it goes on to say, verse 12, not as Cain, who was of the wicked one and murdered his brother. So right there, the scripture is telling you that Cain was the seed of who? The serpent, right? As a matter of fact, most of Genesis 1 through 11 is all about establishing the two seeds. It's probably one of the most important things that Genesis 1 through 11 is talking about. In other words, we can read about, Abraham. We can read about Noah and the flood, and then you've got Lot and all these other things going on, the Tower of Babel and everything. One of the main messages of Genesis 1 through 11 is the establishment of the two different seeds. And as I said, it goes all the way to the book of Revelation. That's why in the book of Revelation, where it says, hey, he went to make war with the remnant of her seed, he finally tells us, hey, the seed of the woman are those who keep God's commandments and have the testimony of Yeshua Messiah. It goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. Genesis 3:15, right? How else do we know? In Hebrews 11:4, it says, by faith Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous. So see, Cain is of the seed of the serpent, as it says, he was of the wicked one. And we already know that we're talking about the children or the seed of God and the children of the seed of the serpent. So what I'm saying to you is that when this first story, after Adam and Eve sin, it's all about establishing, all right, we got two, it's starting right then and there, right? Genesis 3:15, I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. Boom, next story. Next story, Cain and Abel. Boom, enmity of the seed, right there, jolly on the spot. No waiting. Next story is about that. So Adonai came and investigated the sin. Then the Lord said to Cain, where's Abel, your brother? What have you done? Right? Just like with Adam and Eve, he's investigating. He turns and he curses the serpent, right? And so likewise with Cain, so on the one hand, so remember I told you that you have to watch as these different themes are transformed, right? It's not always the same. Remember I said Adonai doesn't destroy the earth every time in order to show, and then create a new heavens and a new earth to give us a new beginning. Well, it's the same thing with this curse. He doesn't just curse the serpent all through the book of the Bible. He started off cursing the serpent. We know now that Cain is the seed of the serpent, and now it says you are cursed. So he started off cursing the serpent. Now he's cursing the seed of the serpent. So there's your transformation right there. But it's the same theme that goes back to Genesis 1 through 3. It's a transformation of Genesis 3:15, the curse on the serpent. It's just now it's manifesting itself as a curse on the seed of the serpent. Everybody with me? So that's why, see what happens is, that's why a lot of times we don't connect things in the New Testament to things all the way back here at the beginning, because things have changed. You see, things have changed a little bit. That's why we love those little gems like Revelation 12:17. We love those gems like Revelation, because Revelation 12:17, he's telling you, hey, remember the seed of the serpent back in Genesis 3:15? The seed of the serpent? Well, the seed of the woman, those are those who keep his commandments. See, right there, he's just telling you. He's identifying things for you outright instead of us having to put on our thematic thinking caps, and figure things out all the time. All right? Okay. So, and then when we look at the theme of judgment, all right? So, remember I told you they're little minor cycles. So this is a minor cycle, because the major cycle is when he gets to, Noah. You have a total recreation of the earth. So we have a little judgment right here. Surely you have driven me out, garash, from the face of the earth. Cain went from the presence of the Lord, and so in other words, he's doing everything that Adam happened, right? Remember, Adam was driven from the Garden of Eden. Now look at Cain. It says here, Cain went out, he's driven out, you went out from the presence of Eden, just like Adam. It's the same story, but just the characters are changed. But thematically, we say it's the same story, right? The fall into sin, Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, just like Adam and Eve sinned, okay? Now, here's another little transformation, right? So the main sin of Adam and Eve was that they ate from the tree that they weren't supposed to eat of. Well, if that theme stayed the same, then some kind of way we would see Cain eating from a tree. See, that's not his big sin that messed him up, right? His sin was Cain was murdering his brother, okay? Now, I want to show you how the Bible makes it very clear that there's a connection between Adam's sin and Cain's sin, right? In case you're like, well, there's two different sins, The Bible makes it very, very clear, okay? And this is what we're going to do. I want us to help us to see that Cain, once Adam failed, remember, they're looking for the seed of the woman, right? The seed of the woman who's going to crush the serpent's head. So all eyes are on Cain at this point, because he's the firstborn, he's the son, right? So he's supposed to be the new Adam. He's supposed to overcome where his father didn't. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to see that Cain's fall is told in parallel with Adam's fall, right? So in other words, what we're going to do is this. We're going to read through the story of Adam and Eve's fall into sin chronologically. We're going to read through the story of Cain's fall into sin chronologically, and what you're going to see is thematically at each point of the way, there's a perfect thematic match, okay? A perfect thematic match as we go through the themes, okay? All right, so let's go to this. So it's a parallelism. So the first half of the parallelism is the story of Adam's life. The second half of the parallelism is the story of Cain's life. So again, these are things these are themes in the Scripture. So what we're going to see is that as we go through Adam and Eve's life, we're going to have theme 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then as we go through Cain's life, we're going to have theme 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they're all going to match. Boom, right in an order. It's so ordered that you know that it's not just there by chance, okay? So let's see. So we've got 5, 6, 7 themes, right? I'll just shoot through them. They'll make sense. All right, Adam, it says that he was a man formed from the dust of the ground. The man became a living being. This is the creation of a new human being on the earth, right? That's thematically connected to when Eve bore Cain and Abel. She brought forth a new person onto the earth. Adonai brought forth a new man on the earth. Adam and Eve, that's the theme right there, okay? Let's look at the next one. Adonai took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to keep it, right? Put him in the Garden of Eden. Adam's occupation, right, was gardening with the ground, right? Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground, okay? That's the connection. Their occupations, right? This is Adam's occupation. This is Cain and Abel's occupation. So what we're seeing is these themes, as we go chronologically through each story, they're going to match perfectly. There are 3 themes here. The serpent, the beast of the field, and the conversation before sin. So just think about how when Satan, when he deceived the man and the woman, he went and talked with Eve first. Remember, he kind of, hey, did God really say, right? Had a little conversation. And then the serpent caused the death of Eve and indirectly, right? He deceived them. And then Adam and Eve's fall into sin, that's compared to what we read in Genesis. So right here, just like the serpent had a conversation with Eve before the sin, it says Cain talked with his brother, right? Adam and Eve, they have a death, right? Cain rose up and killed his brother. And then Adam and Eve's fall, Cain's fall into sin by murder. So in other words, this element C is basically the sin, right? It is the sin. Adam and Eve's sin versus Cain's sin, excuse me. All right, then what do we have next in the story of Adam and Eve? Where are you? Adonai comes and says. And he said, and then not only, he says, where are you? He says, have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded that you shouldn't eat? Watch this. Watch what happens with Cain and Abel. Where is your brother Abel? And then, what have you done? You see? Do you see how these 2 stories are being told in parallel, right? So this is Adonai's way. This is his way. If we notice, this is his way of saying, I want you to see a connection between what happened with Adam and Eve's sin and what happened with Cain's sin, right? Because this is a pattern that's being repeated where, as I said before, Adonai chooses his man of the hour, and then his man of the hour typically falls, right? And then Adonai's like, okay, let me go see what happened. And then, boom, judgment. This is going to happen all the way to the book of Revelation, okay? And this is going to help us. Got lots of things we need to discover. Curses the ground for your sake. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. So he curses the ground, and you shall eat the herb of the field, okay? That's thematically connected to, in Cain's life, instead of, so the ground was cursed in the case of Adam and Eve, but with the case of Cain, now you are cursed from the earth. And then with Adam and Eve, what we saw is that you shall eat of the herb of the field, but with Cain, he's like, you're not eating because it's not giving you anything, right? See the theme there? So the theme is different, right? Over here is you shall eat of the herb of the field, right? It's going to bring forth thorns and thistles. That's the curse. That's the negative part. You're going to have to eat these things, but the bad part is that the ground is going to be working against you. Well, the same thing happened with Cain, only on a greater extent. Not only are there going to be thorns and thistles, but the earth just isn't going to give you any food, period. You not only have to worry about the thorns and the thistles not giving you food, but the earth itself is just like, I'm not giving up any fruit to Cain at all. So it's exactly the same theme again, okay? Lord God sent him out of the Garden of Eden. You have driven me this day from the face of the ground. And what we're doing is we're just going in chronological order through both of these stories. And it becomes very obvious once we begin to look at these themes, it becomes very obvious that Adonai has organized. So he drove out the man and placed cherubim at the east of the garden. Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And then lastly, Genesis 4:17 through 24 is a genealogy of the descendants of Cain, and that's followed in Genesis 5:1 through 32 with a genealogy of the descendants of Adam. Okay? So every step of the way, these two stories are told in parallel because this, again, this is establishing this pattern. Because as I said, this pattern is going to work its way from Adam, through Cain, and, through Noah. It's going to go through Abraham, and it's finally going to come to the children of Israel, and then ultimately Messiah, okay? This is all what's going on in the background of all these stories that we're reading about in the Bible, okay? All right, so let's look at another little minor section here. So this time I'm going to focus on Genesis chapters 4 through 11. Because remember earlier I told you that one of the main things that Adonai is trying to do in Genesis chapter 4 through 11 is to focus our attention on the fact that there are two seeds in the world, okay? There are two seeds. Yeshua taught the same thing. Yeshua called them the wheat and the tares. You see? Two seeds. That, see, the devil has our world deceived. See? The devil has people focus on the noise and not the signal, right? If you're dealing in electronics, you want your signal, what you're trying to measure, to be as big as possible so you can see the signal, and there's all sorts of other noise. It's on a radio, right? And you turn in, you want to get that station you're trying to listen to, right? But what's happening? You hear all that, right? Or back when we were kids, some of us old folk, right? Because I grew up with a black and white TV, right? And it had the little rabbit ears. Right? And you remember how many of you remember trying to get the UHF stations? Right? And so it was this little game you had to play with the rabbit ears, right? And depending on how you turned it, you either got a strong signal or you got a weak signal. If you got a weak signal, there's a bunch of noise and a bunch of fuzzy dots all over the place. And then when you turn it the right way, there's a human. Yeah, I can see the picture there, right? So the devil because most of this world is the seed of the serpent. So he's got them focused on the noise instead of the signal. This is signal, what we're talking about. When we say that there's only two seeds in the world, that's signal. You want to know what noise is? Noise is black versus white. Yeah. See, you got it? That's noise. That's noise. That's just something the devil has created to get people's attention focused off of, you know what? There's only two seeds in the Bible. There's a seed of the serpent Because that's the only two categories that make any difference. When we get through with this whole thing called our life on earth, what makes a difference? Whether you are the seed of the serpent or the seed of the woman. For eternity, that's what makes a difference. So all this other stuff is noise, right? Especially the racial stuff, right? So, blacks, pitting blacks against whites, and I'm supposed to hate somebody just because they're white. What? Remember I told you guys, I love saying this when I first got saved, watching what was that? The 700 Club, Pat Robertson. And they had a young black man on there, and they were talking about race relations, and he said, I'm not motivated by the color of my skin. He said, I'm motivated by the Spirit of God. Oh, my goodness. I'll never forget that. I will never forget that. This right here is noise. Signal is the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. We want to be the seed of the woman. Who are they? Those who keep God's commandments and have the testimony of Yeshua. That's all that matters. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. Okay? So we're going to see the development of the contrast between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and the lineage of the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. And it begins in Genesis 4. This is our journey. All right, we've already seen the beginning of the two seeds. We already know that Cain is the seed of the serpent, right? We know that for a fact. And these two spiritual seeds are going to be further differentiated through their offspring. So it's not that the physical lineage, it's not like a deterministic thing, well, if you're a descendant of Cain, you're automatically the seed of the serpent. But Adonai is using the lineages to teach us about the two seeds. He's using the physical lineage of Cain's descendants versus, it's going to turn out to be Seth's descendants, to teach us about these two seeds. So right here, Cain's descendants, man's work in his ancestral plot of land. He built a city, and he named, he built a city and called the name of the city after his son Enoch, all right? So you've got Cain's descendant there. So Cain builds a city. And then you've got Lamech. And I kind of skipped some verses there. And Lamech, he had sons. Jabal, he was the father of those who dwell in tents. Yuval, he was the father of those who play the harp and the flute. And then Tubal came. He was an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. And I believe the Jewish sages, they say that what he was doing is he was making implements of war. That's really what he was getting at. I believe that's probably true, all right? But how fitting it is, I remember I told you earlier, how fitting it is that Cain would build the first city, right? Because he can't do the farming thing. But here, thematically, the Torah is emphasizing how Cain's descendants are known by their works and their earthly pursuits. Look at that. See, there's so much in this genealogy in chapter 4 with Cain's descendants and the descendants we're going to see of Seth that's so unspoken, and yet it speaks volumes. Do you see how it's all talking about Jubal, and who's the other? Tubal, Cain, and where's the other one? Jabal, right, okay? You see how it's all talking about their earthly pursuits and what they did for work. Well, he's the one that did this, and he's the one that did that, and he's the one that taught everyone how to make implements, the iron and bronze, right? He built this big city. It's all about their works. And then it talks about Lamech. He took for himself 2 wives. Well, here's his sin. Because we need to relate this back to Genesis 1 through 3. What did Adonai said? He said, I created them male and female, and he said, I created them one flesh. That a man would leave his father and mother and cleave to the one woman. And what does he do? right? He's like, I'm going to get myself 2 wives. Well, that's not the plan. That's not what Adonai had. That's why Yeshua said, hey, it was not so in the beginning. He said, yeah, he let you, have the number of wives, and divorce and things like that. He said, but that's not the way it was in the beginning, right? So he took for himself 2 wives, right? They should be one flesh. It corrupts that one flesh relationship, all right? Now, Lamech, not only does he destroy the one flesh relationship by having 2 wives at the same time, he murders a man. And we relate that to Cain. Cain was a murderer also. And remember, Adonai said, I created man in my image. That's why when he got to Noah, he said, you know what? If somebody kills somebody else by man's hand, he has to die. Because when I created men, I created them in my image. And if someone destroys that image, they're going to have to be destroyed. Okay? Thus, the seed of the serpent is obviously being established through the lineage of Cain. Murderer. Right? Couple of murderers here. First Cain, then Lamech. And then also, he's taken 2 wives at one time, right? So this is not someone who's obeying the commandments of God. You see? Seed of the serpent. All right? They show who they are through their disobedience to God's commandments. And this is what's happening every day on the news when you hear, about, all the different groups, whether it's Antifa or whether it's this group or that group, and all the people who are, all the pro-abortion rights and all this other stuff. Right? They're just showing that they don't obey God's commandments. And if you don't obey God's commandments, which seed do you belong to, according to Revelation 12:17? It becomes abundantly clear, right? Let's look at Seth. Now, we looked at Cain's descendants, right? Murderer, destroying the one flesh relationship, having 2 wives at one time. All they think about is what they built, what they do for a living, right? I do this, he does this, he does that. Let's look at Seth's descendants. With Abel's death, now, get this. Abel was the seed of the woman, right? So with his death, we need a new seed of the woman, right? We need a new seed of the woman. Because Cain's descendants are all going, they're going downhill very fast. Walking in his footsteps. So we need a descendant. And so guess what? Guess who comes on the scene? This is the book of the genealogy of Adam. In the day that God created him, look, he's using new creation language. You see that? In the day God created man, he created him in the likeness of God. Remember that? New creation? This right here is a new creation right here. And Adam lived 130 years, and he begot a son in his own likeness of his own image. You see all of this wording here that reminds you of Genesis chapter 1 through 3, right? And the reason why is because Adam was Adonai's man. Cain should have picked up the role there, and he didn't. So Adonai's like, time for a new creation. I got to start over, and I'm going to use Seth. He's my man, right? Is that right, Seth? We haven't gotten there. Okay, let's see. Where's the next verse? I want to make sure. All right. Right, Adonai. And so the allusions of Genesis 5:1 through 3 to the original creation account hint at Adonai starting over with Seth as a new Adam. Okay? Now it's Seth. Because he's establishing the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. All right? And we're going to see this. Seth created by procreation rather than an act of God, as in the instance of Adam. Remember I told you it's going to change a little bit, right? Just going to change. Seth's, all right, a virginal bride for the man. Let's look at that theme. It says he created them male and female. So Genesis 5:2, right? This is what Genesis 5:2. See how Genesis 5:2, again, it goes back to the original creation. You see that? He created them male and female. That's what Genesis 5. So when Seth comes onto the scene, what I want you to see is that you've got all this language, that takes you back to when he created Adam. And this is thematically Adonai's way of saying, I'm creating a new Adam here. Well, through, not the way he did with Adam, literally, right? Okay, let's keep going. Now let's compare Cain and Seth's descendants, all right? Genesis 4:17 through 5:32 is just inviting us to compare the descent, right? Because the first part is Cain's descendants, the next part is Seth's descendants, all right? So 4:17 to 4:24 is Cain's descendants, 4:25 to 5:32 is Seth's descendants. Let's look at their occupations, right? Cain's descendants are characterized by their earthly pursuits, their lifestyle, entertainment, and making a living, right? See, at first it may not seem that this is important, right? Yeah, so what? He was the father of those who made tents. So what? He was the father of those who played instruments. So what? He was the father of those who made, with bronze and, right? Big deal. But you know what? When thematically, when you look at those descendants and you see it's all about their earthly pursuit, watch this. The lives of Seth's descendants are characterized by one phrase, and he died. How many of you see what's going on here? Right? The seed of the serpent is characterized by all of his works. Right? Am I reading into that? No. All their works. I'm the one that does this. He's the one that does that. And then for Seth's descendants, all it says is, and he died. 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 Kind of reminds me of something that says the scripture, right? I live now by faith in the Son of God, my life, right? Galatians 2:20, right? I'm crucified with Messiah. The life that I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God, right? It's just all about us. It's all about us dying. This is taught just through this genealogy, just by comparing these two genealogies with the seed of the serpent, where the whole concern is about all their earthly works and earthly pursuits, versus the seed of the woman, where it's just, and they died. In other words, their life is hidden in the Messiah. It's not based on their works. Okay? That's kind of what it's hinting at. That's what I see anyways. All right? So finally we get to Noah, and it says, this one will comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord has cursed. Okay? And so finally, Noah, of Seth's descendants, Noah is the first one where it talks about him doing any kind of work. Okay? So remember with Cain's descendants, he was the father of this, he was the father of those who do this, the father of those who did that. With Seth's descendants, he died. And then finally, when we get to Noah, we actually find out what one of the seed of the woman does. And look at what the action is. His action is redemptive, right? He's going to comfort us concerning the toil of our hands because of the ground that the Lord has cursed, right? They were looking to him to bring relief from the curse on the ground. His occupation is redemptive. It's being couched in redemptive language here. All right? The focus of attention on Seth's descendants is redemption. The focus of attention on Cain's descendants are their earthly pursuits and their accomplishments on the earth. Okay? That's what's going on here. That's what we're seeing. And the acts of redemption. It says that, and as for Seth, to him also a son was born and named Enosh. Then men began to call on the name of the Lord. You see, it's all totally different with the descendants of Seth. All of a sudden, now we see acts of redemption. We see the focus going back to Adonai. Then men began to call on the name of the Lord. They didn't begin to call on the name of the Lord with any of Cain's descendants. It was through Seth. Okay? So what I'm saying here is that Adonai is establishing the two seeds, the seed of the woman versus the seed of the serpent. The seed of the serpent being those who don't obey his commandments versus those who do. Okay? versus those who do. What about Enoch? It talks about how Enoch walked with God, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Boom, there it is again. He was righteous. To the point where Adonai said, I'm going to take you before you see death. I'm going to take you. At least that's what some folks believe, right? But the point here is that with Seth's descendants, we see hints of redemption, like not seeing death. Or with Noah, being able to help overcome the curse. I said we were going to do this. How much time do I have? All right, we got plenty of time. Okay, sounds good. Here we go. There's, oh my goodness. Let's just look at the word build or built, right? And see, remember what I said is that Adonai's primary purpose, I think, one of his primary purposes, okay, right, is to establish these two seeds, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. And you know how important it is because, like I said, Revelation 12, oh my goodness, that's the most important book in the book. That's the most important chapter in the book of Revelation. And what's it talking about? The enmity between the seeds. You see? So I'm suggesting to you that Genesis 4 through 11 is all about the establishment of these two seeds, and we can see what it is if we do it thematically. Watch this. Genesis 4:17, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city and called the name of the city after his son Enoch. Okay? So what do we want to see here? Remember the Tower of Babel? We're just going to make a little connection here. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city. You see the connection there? So Cain builds a city. And then the generation of the Tower of Babel, who we know were in open rebellion against Adonai, they build a city. Talking about guilt by association. Sometimes guilt by association is exactly what the Bible's trying to get you to see. Right? So whether it's Cain, the murderer, or whether it's the generation of the Tower of Babel, the rebellious ones, they're off building cities. See, now you guys know why. Now you know why. Have you seen the red and blue map after elections? Right? So red Republican votes, blue. Where are all the blue votes coming from? Interesting. Where are all the red votes coming from? Rural areas. I find that fascinating. Especially knowing what I know about my Bible. Right? Especially what I know about who built the first city. Followed up by the folks of the generation of the Tower of Babel who wanted to build a big city. But it doesn't stop there. That's something to think about. Oh my goodness. All the cities. That's where you're getting all those blue votes from. Wow. All right, here we go. So we're looking at the word build and built. How about Nimrod? Cush begot Nimrod. He begun to be a mighty one on the earth. It says the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria and built Nineveh. Wow. So we got Cain who built the city, built. We've got the generation of the Tower of Babel who want to build a city. And now we've got Nimrod who first built Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh, and then he goes and he builds Nineveh, another city. I find that, again, very interesting, right? All of these seeds of the serpent, and we all know these guys are seeds of the serpent. Cain, generation of the Tower of Babel, Nimrod. Okay, first human to successfully lead men in rebellion against Adonai, from what I've been told, right? Somebody told me about my friend. All right, so I've heard that. Oops, I'm about to hit someone with the laser pointer here. Wait a second, what's going on here? All right, hold on, I got lost. Okay, let me go back. So, right there. Nimrod, the first human to successfully lead men in rebellion against Adonai. So I've read that in various places. I believe it. I don't know if it's true. So it reminds me of my friend Joe Snipes. So I had a friend, Joe Snipes. I went to hear him teach one time, and he said something. He was like, well, you know, blah, 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 blah. And then he said, I don't know if it's true or not, but I like it. So I don't know if that's true or not, that Nimrod was the first person to lead humankind in rebellion against Adonai, but I like it. So that's why I'm going to leave that, all right? Now what we want to do is, let's look at this. Okay, I'm messing up with this, I'm messing up. All right, now, so we've seen how the word built or build is used with the seed of the serpent, right? Let's look and see how the word build or built in the beginning books of Genesis. Let's see how their word is used with the seed of the woman. How about Genesis 8:20? Noah built an altar to the Lord. How about Genesis 12:7 with Abram? And there he built an altar to the Lord, right? So he built an altar there, Isaac, right? How about this one? Exodus 1:11. The children of Israel, what were they building? They were forced to build for Pharaoh's supply cities. They didn't just build cities on their own. See what I'm saying? They were forced to build those cities. Moses built an altar, right? All of Seth's descendants work on building things. It's always redemptive. And I didn't leave out any word build or built that had a seed of the woman building something like a city or something. No, they're always building altars. They're building things. Noah built an ark, right? It was redemptive. It was for the salvation of the world. Wasn't it? It was for the salvation of the world. He built that altar. He was it. If Noah didn't make it, that's the end. Right? No more salvation. It's over. Right? Noah and his family, they don't make it. And all the animals. So the seed of the woman, when they're building things in the book of Genesis, it's always redemptive. To help establish or repair or strengthen the relationship between Adonai and God. That's what Yeshua's work on the cross was. It was redemptive, right? Okay? So as we can see, Seth's descendants' work of building was always redemptive, and Cain's descendants, their work of building was always rebellious. Always rebellious, without a doubt. See, this is what I'm saying. These first 11 or so chapters are all about establishing these two seeds. Let's contrast the two seeds through the word name. Okay? Let's contrast the two seeds through the word name in the beginning chapters of the book of Genesis. What name is the seed of the serpent concerned with? Now, you guys can pretty much already guess. What name is the seed of the serpent concerned with? The seed of the serpent. Yeah, what name is the seed of the serpent always, trying to promote? Let's put it that way. Yeah, they're always trying to promote themselves, right? Remember, he's the father of who did this. They're the father of who did that. Cain built a city and named it what? Enoch, after my son, right? He didn't say he didn't build a city to the glory of God, did he? No. It's always about themselves, remember? The seed of the serpent. So watch this. We'll see this. What name is the seed of the serpent concerned with? And thank you for asking. When I say concerned, I mean which one are they trying to promote? Which name are they trying to promote? Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch, and he built a city and called the name of the city after his son Enoch. Okay, so yeah, my son. I'm proud of my son, so I'm going to name the city after him. Okay, he didn't name it after Adonai, or didn't do it for Adonai. Genesis 4:11. Remember the Tower of Babel? Come, let us make a name. For who? For me, myself, and I. You see what's happening here? Just very simple concept. Because when I was studying this, I noticed a pattern. I was like, okay, let me just, because I saw these two connections here with Cain and then the builders of the Tower of Babel. On this name thing, he named it after his son. Let's make a name for ourselves. And then I said, you know what? Let's look at how all of the seed of the serpent. Let's see how they interact with this word name, and let's see how the seed of the woman does. And you see these contrasts like this, right? How about this one? What is the? Oh, okay, yeah. There's a mistake on that slide. What name is the seed of the woman concerned about? In other words, we've seen that the seed of the serpent, they're always concerned about and promoting their own names or the name of their, something other than Adonai. Well, when we see the word name in the beginning chapters of Genesis, as it relates to the seed of the woman, we see a different picture. Genesis 4:26, and as for Seth, to him also a son was born, and he named him Enosh. Then men became to call upon which name? The name of the Lord. Because this is the seed of the woman. The seed of the woman is always concerned about the name of Adonai. Right? Is that what you're concerned with? Right? Mike? You want to see his name glorified, don't you? I want to see Adonai's name glorified. All of us do. We're not here to make a big name for ourselves, right? We're not here to make a big name for we're here to glorify him, right? Look at this one here, Genesis 12:8, talking about Abraham. He pitched a tent on the west of Ai. On the east there, he built an altar to the Lord, and he called on the name of Adonai, right? Okay. All right. This worked out just perfectly because this is the end of that second teaching. I've got about 5 minutes, maybe 4. So this right here, this what I said, I call this a minor cycle because it just had some of the themes. But we learned quite a bit about the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. So what we learned about is that this is the beginning of the conflict between the two seeds. It started really quickly. Right? I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. Boom, next story, Cain and Abel. Right? Initial differentiation of the two seeds through a genealogy. Then we saw a differentiation of the two seeds through their deeds, through work and the word build. Then we saw a differentiation between the two seeds through the word name and which name they were promoting. Okay? So this focus, this one right here focused on Seth as a new Adam, and again, the seeds were clearly differentiated. Okay? Now, what I want to do, I got, like 2 or 3 minutes? Okay, so this is good. So I want to show you what I mean by this whole idea of seed. So you have the Noah's flood, right? Noah has 3 sons, right? Which one of his sons is going to give rise to the seed of the woman? Shem. Right. I got you. Yep. Shem is going, because that's the one who's going to, right. Which one of Noah's sons is now going to start propagating the seed of the serpent? Ham. Right? Now I want you to think about something here. I want you to think about Ham. He's going to be the one, and again, it's just, Adonai is using the genealogy, right? He's just using these physical genealogies to give us a picture of the seed of the woman versus the seed. It doesn't mean that, every single, right, okay? All right, let's look at something here. Let's look at Genesis chapter 10. Now, Genesis 10:8. So Ham, it says the sons of Ham were Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. Now we said that Ham is going to give rise to the seed of the serpent, right? Let's look at Ham's descendants. Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty, well, let's go back. The sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim. What is Mizraim? Egypt. Who was the first nation to oppress the seed of the woman, Israel? Egypt, right? Of the seed of Ham. Let's keep looking. Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Who was Israel's arch enemy from time immemorial? The Canaanites. They were descendants of Ham, and so were the Egyptians. Let's keep going. Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. Who were the Babylonians? Right? Did they have anything to do with Israel and the destruction of Israel and being Israel's enemies? And Erech, Akkad, Calneh, in the land of Shinar. From there he went to Assyria and built Nineveh. Didn't the Assyrians, aren't they the ones that carried away the northern kingdom? Right? Rehoboth and Calneh, Rezin between Nineveh and Calneh, and there was one descendant, I think he might have been a Japheth. The Greeks, in the Bible it calls him Yavan. Yavan is, anyway, forget that. Let's just stick with Israel before I get in trouble. Do you see what's happening here? Remember how we said that the seed of the serpent is going to go through Ham? And now do you see how all the descendants of Ham have been the countries that either persecuted or hated Israel? Okay? Now, of course, we got Esau. That's right. So that's that internal family strife, right? Right? But Ham's descendants, right? So again, what I'm saying is that Genesis 1 through 11 is mainly about establishing their two seeds in the earth. And just remember, that's the signal. All this other stuff, men versus women, black versus white, all these other things that our world is trying to get us to focus on, we're not going to focus on that. We're not going to focus on that. It needs to be about us being the seed of the woman, and it needs to be about us sharing our lives with other people so that they can become a seed of the woman. Right? Amen. Father, in Yeshua's name, we just thank you for your goodness, your kindness, your love, and your mercy. We thank you for your words, and we just pray, Father, in Yeshua's name, that your words, that you would make them clear to us, and we pray again, Lord, that you would open our eyes to see wondrous things from your Torah. We just thank you, Lord. We just ask that these words will be life unto us. Help us to live them. Empower us to be your witnesses in this earth. In Yeshua's name, amen. Amen.